All right, ladies and gentlemen, we now welcome on a very, very special guest. This guy, he's a graduate of Victor High School. He's a three-time New York State champion in lacrosse. Played Division I lacrosse at Albany, Yale, and Denver. He was a five-time Division I All-American, a two-time Division I first-team All-American, and the fourth overall pick in the 2021 PLL draft by the Redwoods Lacrosse Club. And by my knowledge and a lot of people in the world, he is the best in the world at faceoffs. It's TD Ierlan. TD, thank you for joining us, man.
It sounded like a golf intro off the tee.
Yeah,
that was solid, dude. That was
we
good.
We gotta start bringing on like walk-up music, based on the person. But
Exactly.
dude, TD, thanks so much for joining us. You are a stud for doing this, and I've known you for a long time, since you were a little kid, actually growing up, working with your mom at Victor, and knowing your legendary Coach Ierlan dad, and getting to coach your brother on the ice as well. So knowing you since you were a kid and seeing where you are now has been incredible to watch. And like Mike said, those stats are insane, and those are just a few, and we could be here all day just going through stats. But arguably, one of the best lacrosse players in the world currently, pretty much a fair bet that the top Fogo guy out there right now, which we'll talk about what that is. But to have you on today is an honor for us, so we appreciate your time. So the focus today, and our focus here for everything, is chasing edges, finding the 1% for people to reach their goals once they have the foundation of what they're trying to get to. And knowing you really well, TD, and watching you, I've never been blown away by someone as hard as they practiced before, and how diligent, and an absolute machine. And that's what we're going to focus on today, is perfecting your craft. And I think you're perfect for this, because what a special and unique position the Fogo position in is lacrosse. And it's literally an art. And watching you firsthand, on the turf at Victor by yourself with like, a horn that goes off on your phone, and literally just doing rep after rep after rep up on your draws has been insane to watch, and it's obviously paid off. So we're pumped to have you, man, and we can't wait to dive in. So sorry to hear about the loss this in the quarterfinals there, and I know that you weren't part of that, and you had the knee injury, and it sounds like it's not as bad as they originally thought. So how's the knee feeling?
It's good. Thanks for asking. Yeah, thanks for the tire pump too. I could use that before everyday life. Yeah, it's good. I tore my meniscus in a couple spots, but they were worried about my ACL had like a high grade sprain. So didn't want to play me like back-to-back weeks. So they were gonna hopefully give me 3 weeks off, then us make the semis. But we kind of had a tough draw in the first round and blew a lead, but it's tough. But I mean, looking back, it was a really fun rookie year, so I can't complain. But excited to be here, and excited, I guess, silver lining, get to spend more time upstate,
Yeah, for sure. And
I got to jump in here real quick too, because Nader has been going nuts about these practice habits of you, like in the corner doing this weird stuff. So I got to know, like, what are you doing over there? Because he has been talking about this for the past week.
Yeah, so like people don't know lacrosse, and basically, so my position in lacrosse is it's like a hockey face-off, but instead, like, the ball's stationary on the ground, and it almost turns into like a wrestling match with like sticks. And so from that, I basically just do that because that's my job. I do shooting and passing and stuff, but like I'll be doing like things. It basically looks like I'm wrestling, and as the other sport, like the other rest of the sports, like everyone's like running around doing stuff, and I'm just doing like kind of my craft. So I'm like listening to whistles and stuff, but it always looked weird. But everyone's like, "Why are you doing this?" Like, I don't need to practice like playing defense. Like if I just win face-offs, I don't need to play defense. So yeah, it was.
Is it hard to practice without someone else though? Because that's like I feel like it's a little bit different than hockey, because like you just need someone out there to practice. And you also need, obviously you said, your face-offs are stationary, which is a little different than hockey. You need someone to drop the puck. Yeah. But so how is it a little awkward when you're trying to practice by yourself, or is everyone doing that?
I mean, for me, I would just grew up and I got used to it because we didn't really have another face-off guy. I guess it's like anything. Like you could probably go out. I kind of compare it for me at least because there's so many more like intricacies than you'd think. It's like if you're going out and like shooting baskets in basketball, like you could do that for so long. So for me, like, I really enjoy it. So there's so many like little things I'll tweak. So I could do it for a while, and it kind of sounds like nerdy. I'll get like caught up in it. I'll be like, oh, like there's an hour went by or whatever, and practice will be over, and they're like, yeah, all right, we're done now. I'm like, oh, damn. So yeah, I just kind of get like lost in it, which is good. I mean, just care about it, and then come back and always just watch film. And there's always like so many little things you can try, which I guess which is why I like it so much. Yeah, but it's definitely different. But it's like anything that you can just, I don't know. The biggest thing I compare it to, right, is like shooting baskets in basketball, because like you can always try different things. It's obviously better if you're doing it with someone, but
right,
you can always do it.
So let's back up a little bit. So for the people, and we have a lot of hockey people watch the podcast because of Cole and Mike, but for those of people out there that aren't as educated in lacrosse, how important is possession in lacrosse? And I think it's pretty obvious based on your standing in the sport, but explain that for people that aren't huge lax guys, like how important is having the ball?
Yeah. So I'm biased because it's my position, so I think it's pretty important, but the biggest way like I can explain it is like when you play, like, imagine if you played like pick up hockey, right, or pick up like basketball, like, and you do winners, right, or losers. Like in lacrosse, in theory, you could have one team never touch the ball, and when you can, it's different than hockey, right? Like you can control it and really possess the ball better. And like we've went on games, like when we were at Victor, we were in I think it was sectional finals, maybe state quarters, and they were up 4-1, and then we scored, I think, like 17 straight goals without them touching the ball. And
Jeez.
Yeah, and then like by the next time they touched the ball, like 2 quarters had gone by, and they were like, well, this sucks. Obviously, that doesn't happen often, but I mean, the potential's there, and I think probably the biggest thing is, it's like anything. If you're playing a lot of defense versus playing a lot of offense, it's tough for your offensive guys to get in a rhythm. So it's so unique in sports. There's nothing I can really compare it to. I mean, the face-off in hockey is the closest thing, but it's just so much more focused on, right, with being so many more guys and like the game being different. It's honestly it's an interesting position. It makes lacrosse pretty unique too, and whether like some guy has a skill set that maybe he's not the biggest, fastest, or strongest, but he's got good reaction time. He's good at anticipating the whistle, right? Like fast hands. That's something he could excel at and just completely change the game.
Yeah, so it's almost like being on the power play in hockey, where you have possession and you're working your systems, right? And there's fast break situations in lacrosse, but you're going to be able to set up the sets that you want to set up. So having the ball is critical, and that's why there's such a huge. It's got its own position where Fogo is face off, get off, and I know you score plenty of points as well. So that's not your only
best
role,
term in sports.
Yeah, right. But
for sure.
The importance of that position is insane, and you've obviously excelled at it. So dive in a little bit deeper before we get into more of your where you're at currently and some of your, stats. We want to dive deeper and acknowledge those. But you mentioned your high school career a little bit. Now I'm associated with the Victor School District, and I had very proud to see you guys do what you did. But let's just talk about a little bit about the run you guys had. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys won states in 2015, 16, and 17, 3 straight. And didn't you have a 40?
I wasn't on the 17 and 15.
Okay.
We were undefeated though junior senior year.
So you went 44-0, right?
Yeah, high school rocked. It's a lot of fun.
That's insane.
Yeah, how fun was that?
It was.
Oh, no,
so the thing that's probably the coolest is like my best buddies. Of like the 10 kids that graduated and played lacrosse together, like 8 of us still live together between 2 houses downtown in Rochester. So like not only was it we were really successful, it's like you're successful with like your best friends, and like half the time we were just like it was awesome. I guess maybe not we took it for granted, but we had played together since like 3rd grade, so it feels so normal for us. And nowadays you'll see kids with like 5 kids from Victor that go and play college lacrosse, and I think we had like 10 in my senior class alone. And between D1 and D2, I think we had like 8. So it was really cool, and I mean, kind of started a run for Victor, and I mean now it's kind of like everyone kind of hates Victor, and when I was growing up, no one really cared about us because we stunk. So.
Dude, when I was growing up, Victor was point night in hockey. I'll tell you that for free. And now they're coming around. They're a powerhouse.
And then on top of that, like, you were an insane wrestler. And I, watching you in your high school career, like, you're obviously a stud lacrosse player, but arguably as good at in wrestling, and looking at the stats, I try to get a few out of your mom today, but you were over 200 wins, right?
Yeah, over 200. Yeah. I mean,
and there's a banner in the gym for 100 wins. Like, that's a really big deal to have 100 wins.
That's insane.
You made states twice, which is a huge deal, correct?
Yeah, it took 5th junior year, then 3rd senior year. Senior year is tough. Choked against the 1 seed in the semis. Got taken down with 1 second left. Oh, that's probably the worst loss of my career. I don't know if I can work from that.
So is there a huge connection there between being a face-off guy and wrestling? Like, do you think that's a big part of you being so successful?
Yeah, I think wrestling, I kind of point a lot of success in anything just to wrestling is, one, there's some similarities between like being close to the ground and moving. But, I mean, wrestling, I mean, if you look like guys like UFC, like, it's you on them, right? Like, if you lose, it's all your fault, right? So, I mean, me losing in state semis, I have no one else to blame for myself. And that taught me kind of a lot of life lessons. And it's really easy in sports now. I think that's one thing I see with maybe younger generations. It's just like people are very quick to like point the blame and blame other people. In wrestling, you just can't do that. So it was one thing that helped me a lot when I go to college. It's such a one-on-one position that I play. Like, in reality, your wings do help you quite a bit, but if you're losing face-offs, more of the time it's on you and it's not on anyone else. So it's, I mean, the pressure I had in wrestling matches, and I guess kind of would put on myself, as big of lacrosse games that I've played in, it's nothing really compares to kind of wrestling in states. Definitely my senior year, but also like junior year too, just because you're out there in front of 20,000 people and they're just watching you and one other guy, and you're in like a singlet. So, I mean, you're pretty exposed out there. And so it definitely has helped me in a lot of things in life, feel like way more comfortable and stuff. But yeah, it's the one-on-one mindset is so similar to face-offs, and that's why there's a lot of good wrestlers that make pretty good face-off guys.
I want to jump in and kind of for the listeners out there that may not know some of these, go over some of your college stats and more so your records that you have in college lacrosse. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, because I did a little search. Actually, I got a lot of this from the Face-Off Factory, which I know you're involved in. So hopefully they were accurate. But I mean, these are all NCAA records you have, where you have most ground balls in a season with 293 in 2019, career ground balls 867, and then we go to the face-offs with career face-offs won in your career, which is 1,245, and in 2018 at Albany you had a 79.1% win percentage, which is absurd. And I know it says you have the highest face-off percentage total in your career of 75.3%. For any person that has over 500 attempts in Division I history. Now, I mean, those alone are just absurd. Those are among many, many more records. I kind of want to ask you, how much pressure do you feel when you get into the draw and you have to win it? I mean, is this all your preparation that leads up to it, of you being in the field and Victor and training, or do you feel a little bit of pressure knowing that this is my job and I need to get this face-off win to control possession for my team?
I think that's probably the biggest thing throughout college that helped me, is I had Coach Shea at Yale especially. He really helped me kind of deal with just kind of managing. And I think one thing a lot of people do is they just put the weight of the world on their shoulders, and they put so much pressure on a situation. And one thing I've had to get better at is, especially it's such a split-second thing, you're reacting to a whistle, and if the guy is 1% faster than you and you're coming down to like hundredths of a second reaction time, like, you're going to lose. So, right. I mean, I used to put so much pressure on myself, and then Coach Shea really talked to me. He's just like, look, at the end of the day, like, he's like, you are where you are just because, like, there's a reason you're here. And I think that's one thing I always just keep telling myself is you can't really put the weight of your world on your shoulders, and you just got to focus on what's directly in front of you. And then you can kind of deal with the consequences and what happens later. Figures, like, for me, there's probably 30 face-offs in a game, 30 to 40 usually, and I'll just go in and think, if I lose the first one, I'll be like, well, there's 29 more. And if I win the first one, I just think, well, it could have been worse. I could have lost every face-off today. So, I mean, it's just like little victories, but it was something I really struggled with going into college. It's just like you put the weight on the world on your shoulders, and geez, third time I said that now. I got it.
No,
Yeah, but you put so much pressure on yourself, and if you're a guy who's used to winning like 85% of the faceoffs, and you lose 2 right away, you start thinking like, all right, I got to win like 18 in a row, or like I don't know, my stats go down and things like that. And I just once I stopped like really caring about that, it was kind of when I saw my game take off, and just really like resetting and kind of like just focusing on the task ahead of me and kind of block out all the outside noise. That was probably the biggest thing. Is just like you just kind of have to focus on what's at hand, and everything that's going to happen is going to happen regardless. Probably I'm nervous before games and like all week, but I kind of think it's good because it shows like if you're nervous about something, right, you care.
Yeah,
for sure. I kind of prefer like going into a game if you're nervous, like that week if you're nervous about it, you're going to do what has to get done to be prepared for the game, right? And then once the game's there, that's why you play and that's why you practice is just for the game. So you kind of got to go let it all hang out. So it's I've gotten better with it. It's still a struggle of mine just because it's such a you win or lose position in the sport, but it's definitely it can be stressful at times.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead, Mikey. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, because that's how I used to feel as a goalie. Like you get super nervous before the game starts, and then you kind of get in the flow of warmups, and you get that first shot. And I know for you, probably it's that first face-off, and then you're like, all right, this is my job. Like now I'm just back to work and doing what I love, and the rest kind of falls in place, like you said. Which I feel like that's the mindset you have to have.
What's a good face-off percentage? Like in hockey, if you're over 50%. That's a good night. And we were talking before too, like if you're 55 to 60, you're like an elite player in the National League. And that's something, I mean, you definitely have great perspective with what you were saying there about kind of, taking one draw at a time. And if you lose one, not sweat the little things and kind of, learn from that going forward. But I feel like it's got to be the same in lacrosse, but it's such a rhythm. It's such a rhythm thing, face-offs, where like if I win the first one of the game, I'm like, dude, I'm buzzing tonight. I'm having a good game. Like I use that as an advantage, but then it can also go the opposite way. So I'm kind of going off track there, but that is something great that you kind of touched on there. But back to it, what's a good percentage?
Usually you try to strive for like 55% is like a good percentage. At Yale,
yeah, when have you ever been below 55? I haven't seen that once on here.
Yeah, so I mean, once you hit pros, like if you're over 50, you're kind of doing your job, especially with only being 8 teams in the league, right? I mean, if you're over 50, you're doing a good job pro-wise. Usually the top guys are like 55 to 60. There's usually 1 or 2 guys that break 60%. I think this year me and one other guy are above 60. But this year there's like kind of a big drop off after the first couple. But yeah, so in college, it was actually when I was at Yale, we used to have like, I think it was like our goal was like to go 55%. And then my senior year, they changed it to like 65 or 70%.
Those kids are probably so pissed at you.
Yeah, and now it's the same thing. Like the face-off guys will text me for the alumni game, and they still keep track of like if you hit it for the alumni game, and they're like, "You're such a dick." Like, they're like, "How are we supposed to do this when you go against a couple All-Americans every year? It's like that's just not attainable." So they, Coach Shea, just one of those classic little. I don't know, because look at the competitor going in you, but it's funny how the lasting effect of it.
Man, speaking of the dick, I see here that when you were at Yale, you went 26 for 26 against Harvard. Like, what is that guy you're going against thinking? Like, he's got to be an absolute blender. You probably made him quit the sport right after that game.
That was the funniest part about that game is, like us and Harvard had so much beef, and like they scheduled us for senior day, which was just like disrespectful. And we had some like history with Harvard, so they were like chirping me like really, really hard. And going into the game, like the captain comes up to me, he's like, you're gonna win every faceoff this game. I was like, I don't know, like we'll see. I'm just gonna try and win 1 for 1. And we go and like we just end up smacking them, and like they were still chirping for a while, and it got to the point I never chirped, but like I think it was like 24-3 in the third quarter, and someone like had something to say to me. I was like, dude, you are the other face-off guy. You have one job. I was like, your team has 4 ground balls. I was like, you guys are atrocious. Like not even good at chirping, just being mean about it. But yeah, that was a fun game on their senior day. They were
Oh,
pissed.
love
It was
that.
like 26-8 or something. It was a smacking.
So was it only one guy that was going against you, or did they? You got to switch it up after at least 10 in a row or something, no?
Yeah, they I think they used like 5 or 6 guys. They probably used like
Next
3
guy up, just running through him, dude.
And the face-off coach for them too is one of my good friends. He's actually from upstate, and he got to the point in the third quarter, everything was just falling apart. So he's like, if you lose one, you're out. And they just kept cycling through like every
that's
guy.
great.
It was so funny. Yeah,
I love that.
was a funny game.
It was like a charity game. You know, he was winning so many draws that everybody got a shot to take face.
Yeah. So what was it like playing for 3 schools, TD? Because I know early on that you played for Albany and you were successful, and knowing you well, I have a pretty good idea of, why you decided to move on, and, then COVID hit. Like, what was it like playing for 3 schools? What was some of the decision-making that went into that process?
I mean, going to Yale, just for the education at Yale, kind of like a no-brainer on that aspect. I mean, end of the day, my brother was going to Cornell, and I saw what they were doing for him alumni-wise before he was even like in college, and I didn't really think I could play lacrosse very long, so I was like, I want to try and get a good job. So I went to Yale, and then was enrolled, and Ivies didn't play any sports last year, so I couldn't go back. So I had to kind of make a mid-year move again. 2 of my buddies from Yale had graduated and did their 5th year out at Denver. And my one buddy had a room, probably like 6 feet by 8 feet. He's like, hey, it's a small room, but like, you want to share and like come out here for the last half of the year? I was like, I guess so. So just mid-year transfer, like showed up 8 games through. It was odd. I mean, Denver was so different too with COVID. Like we had 70 guys on the team. I showed up halfway through, and we could only go to the field in our house. We took all our classes online. And I didn't really get to meet most of the guys until the last week after we lost, and got to meet them then. But Denver was so different. But I mean, as weird of a journey it was, like I have lasting relationships from every spot, and I have good relationships with every coach. So there's nothing really. I mean, it worked out. It's a pretty unique ride. All the high school kids are asking me about recruiting stories and stuff, and I was like, hey, I can help you with anything you need. I've gone through this process now like 3 or 4 times. So.
Yeah. And we used to work with Ben Reeves when he was at Yale a little bit, who was another Rochester guy who was tearing up the nation. Not a Fogo, but he was an attackman, right, TD?
Yeah.
But him talking about what the Yale facilities were like and how seriously they took the development and the performance side, like way above most other D1 programs and schools that I've been exposed to and heard of. Like they were doing all kinds of stuff that was unheard of at that time. And I'm sure they've progressed since. So I'm sure knowing you, that was a big part of it too.
Yeah. Their facilities are awesome. They just, of course, right when you leave, they build a nice brand new field house and everything with new locker rooms. That's how it goes.
That's tough. Yeah.
So I also wanted to dive a little bit deeper into kind of what makes you tick the way that you do, because you're a special human, both physically and obviously a salt of the earth guy too. And knowing your family very well, I've seen kind of a lot of these things take place, and I have a pretty good idea of some of the reasons why you are the way you are. But, you're an elite athlete. You're definitely in the 1% and beyond. But, your brother Chase, as you mentioned, is also one of the most amazing people and athletes I've ever trained as well. And is it true that he is the more decorated Victor athlete right now? I mean, I don't mean to stir anything up. But...
No. Like everyone always. So I have 2 state titles. He has 4, and then his senior year, he was the New York State lacrosse and hockey player of the year, I believe, like something along those lines.
Both of them player of the year.
So,
yeah, and then AGR athlete of the year. Like, yeah, he was, which is like our area. For my year, the kid who got it he's won 3 junior Olympic gold medals for wrestling. He's like undefeated in college. He has 1 loss.
Who is it? Yanni Diakmahalis?
Yeah, he's like, so I kind of got Seward on that, but like, yeah, coming out of high school, I was like, yeah, Chase was like the bigger recruit. He's like an Under Armour All-American, 4 state titles. I was like, wow, it must be nice.
So four state titles. I'll just tee this one up for you. But it's 4 state titles, 3 in lacrosse, 1 in hockey, 8 sectional championships, 5 in lacrosse, 3 in hockey. That's insane. And Dirty, you would love him. He's a goalie, and he was a good hockey goalie too. And state championship game, the time they won it, they're only up by 1, I believe, on the PK empty netter. He tries to score. Almost gets knocked down.
No way.
So that's what a sick bastard he is. But anyway, going back to your family, your mom, I've known her for years, teaching, with her at Victor, and she is a no BS person. I love it, every second of it, and she doesn't take any crap. And then your dad is one of the most legendary humans on the planet. Coach Mike is about as good as it gets, and I'm sure he's had a big role. Both of them have had a big role in how competitive you are. Talk a little bit about their role and your family's role, and what makes you tick to be so competitive, to get out there by yourself to practice all the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I have someone to vouch for me on this one. I say, I think my dad's the most intense human being I've ever been around in my life. Like, everyone says it, but like after our first professional game, so you're around like a bunch of alphas, and then like my dad's out there giving like coaching advice to like the best player in the world. I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? And then like next week, Rob Pennell comes back. He's like, oh, I met your dad, Coach, and I was like, all right, so we're calling him Coach, I guess. Like, he was like, not like we would be at. I remember we were like 2nd or 3rd grade. We were at the Irondequoit Lacrosse Classic, and this team from Canada called the Edge was really good. And my dad took me, and like we went scouting, and I used to go like from then on. I was like, we would scout every team I played, no matter like whether it was rec basketball, like I was watching film or like watching games. It was like since 3rd grade. Like winning is taken very seriously with him. Yeah, like, and he was. If I ever come, like, I would never even come. And now it's just that helped me. That kind of helped me once I got to college, and like for me to practice every day, and even in high school, like it's second nature. It almost seemed like you've been caring so much about it since you're in 3rd grade. Like it seems weird if you don't do it. So I mean, he has had such an influence on my life for as much stress as he's caused me. Like he's really shaped like my work ethic and things like that. And I guess luckily my mom has a little bit of grounding force, so I can reset a little bit better than my dad does. He keeps his receipts like very strictly. Like I remember I lost one face-off one game, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you gave that 3rd one away." I was like, "Well, I won pretty much all the other ones," but so I feel like I can get on and over. But like he takes it personal, man, and he cares so much because like he is one of the most appreciative humans I've ever met, and like Coach B can attest to that. Like. It's like when they won states, I think he was the happiest guy for hockey.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
They think he kept everyone out of their house for like many hours. No one was allowed to go home. But like it was just he kind of basically taught me, he's like, if you're gonna play sports and you're gonna care about it, and really I think it could have been whatever I had passion for, is like you're gonna do it to your best of your ability, and you're not gonna really cut corners. And I think just like that scouting thing at 3rd grade, like people in college didn't even watch film, and I've been doing it since 3rd grade, which is just absurd.
That is crazy.
To give a little idea of how intense he is, TD, you want to tell a story about when he used to be the Fairport football coach, and the year after he was done coaching, he was like losing his mind on the first day of football, like he didn't know what to do with himself, and he went on a little run. You want to tell that story? Do you remember it?
Oh yeah, I can't forget this one. Yeah, so he coached football like my whole childhood, and then I think I was around probably like a 7th or 8th grader. So he basically wants to spend more time with me, my brother getting older, playing sports, especially Chase playing hockey. So he was, I think it was say September 1st for easy, like his first game or something. He's near the end of summer, so they're about to start up football, and he got so eager. He had my mom drive him out 26.2 miles. This is like no training or everything. He's like, I'm just gonna run home. And I was like, he's like, well, he's like, I've always wanted to do a marathon. I'm going to do it now. I'm really bored. I got to want to get some steam out. And we're like, okay. So he runs like 8.5 miles at like a 7-minute pace. And then he doesn't finish. He has to call my mom. My mom picks him up. He's so pissed. He's so aggravated about it. He gets home. He sleeps 1 hour and then gets up, marks out a marathon for himself to do around Victor picks up like a couple Gatorades, couple like Snickers bars and waters, and places them strategically around. Does a marathon at 4:30 in the morning, but like has to go and finish it on the track, but like calculated wrong. So instead of he had to do like 4 laps on track, he did like 24 laps. So he did like 28 miles or something. And then he was back when my mom got up, and mom's like, "What were you doing?" He's like, "Yeah, I got pissed, so I just ran the marathon." And so it was like just the most intense
human being. Folks. Yeah, there it is.
What's going on with you?
But knowing them all as people, like you and your brother are 2 of the most respectful people on the planet and hardest working, competitive people, and I think they have a lot to do with it, I'm sure. So awesome stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in there though too. Like, was it ever too much? Like, obviously, it seems like he's an unbelievable, genuine human who just strictly wants the best for you. But I mean, were there ever points where it was too tough?
Yeah, there definitely is points, and I mean, he knows it now. I think it's just one thing is just he cares so much that sometimes when I was younger, I wouldn't realize it would come out in the wrong ways, you know. And like now, I've come like to look back, and I mean, yeah, there's definitely times it was unnecessary stress, but like I also probably not here where I am if he's not wired how he is, you know. So like in the long run, it definitely was a good thing, but in the times when you're younger and like dealing with it, especially being the older child, and for some reason Chase gets through to him way more than I do, and he can just like joke his way out of it, but like me, it's like very like strict. But I mean, I know now, like looking back at it, everything he did, it wasn't just to be mean. It was all for like purpose and stuff, you know. But yeah, it was definitely time. There's testy times. It's probably everyone had.
Of course, yeah.
I read an article earlier. Tell me if this is true or not. When you got drafted first overall in the MLL draft, were you doing schoolwork at Yale?
Yeah, I was finishing up a final. It's like the worst draft day story ever. My parents didn't believe me that I got drafted because we kind of knew I was going back to Yale. And like my parents felt so bad. Like we didn't get a cake or anything. I was like, I didn't think they're actually going to like draft me at all. But yeah, I was finishing up a final, like politics in the EU. It was miserable.
How'd you end up finding out like that you got drafted?
Someone texted me. So they had the first pick, and a guy from their team texted me like 30 minutes before the draft even started. And was like, "Hey, congrats, man!" And I kind of thought he was just talking like in general, like he kind of had an idea. And then my phone was kind of blowing up, and it was all during COVID. So like I was taking the test on my laptop, and my phone was getting the messages. It was like blowing up, and was getting afraid it was gonna like log me out and stuff for like my test. But it was and like my dad was like so excited. I was like, "Dad, I got like 20 minutes. I gotta finish the test." And I'm like really behind. So it was wild.
Now, because you went back to school, do they lose your rights? Is that how it works? And I know that the MLL had the merger with the PLL, so then that allowed you to get drafted again by the Redwoods, which is now who you play for. You're drafted 4th overall by them. Is that because you went back to school and you're draft eligible again?
Yeah. So I mean, with lacrosse being like a growing sport, it's a little funky. So there's 2 leagues, and basically, the lacrosse league absorbed the MLL. So there was only one team they took from the MLL for now, and since it wasn't the Lizards, everyone else was basically put back into the player pool. And the rookies were just basically redrafted again. So then I was put back in. So I was drafted. I got fired from my job before I even started with the Lizards, I guess.
That's crazy. So looking at your standing in the sport, and I think this is not just pumping your tires. And I know you'll have a hard time accepting this as a humble guy, but you're arguably one of the best players in the entire world. Right. And I mean, that's not just us saying this because I know you. It's like it's a statistical thing. And like looking at this is something I think about often. Like if you were playing football or hockey or basketball or baseball, like you'd be set for life. You know, you'd be retiring on a yacht somewhere, several years from now. And the good news is that the sport is progressing so much. And I think you probably they have a lot to thank you in that manner. But, looking at your career, I'm sure you can play as long as you want and you'll have a great career. You'll make plenty of money now that the sport is growing and things. But, do you ever think about that? Like, do you ever think about, first of all, that situation and like what drives you? Like a lot of people at the pro level are driven by my next contract or whatever the case may be, you know, what's still driving you, knowing that you could do very well financially for as long as you want, but you know, you may have to work after you're done with lacrosse.
Yeah, I think, I guess probably just with the Premier Lacrosse League, what they've done, this being their 3rd year now, the pay structure is better, right? But probably just the biggest thing is like the aspect of it, like kind of losing the MLL had a kind of like a beer league stereotype, right? Like it was the best players in the world, but you'd show up on Saturday, like there'd always be like things. So I mean, it was a lot. It was like a good start and a lot of good things, but the PLL basically tried to make it professional. But even like from my aspect is like if you're gonna do something, kind of was saying earlier, is like you're not really gonna do it half-assed. Like you want to go and you're gonna do it, and at the end of the day, whether like you're playing for anything, you're out there with the best players in the world for the sport, and you're not out there to lose by any means, right? So like just pure pack of like competition, like that'll drive anyone, right? And especially too, I mean, there's a lot of humility checks. Like if you, especially for my position, right? Imagine there's only the 8 best like goalies in the world for hockey, right? Or there's 8 teams. It would be such a tough league, and we obviously don't have as many like professional guys as hockey or anything like that. But you're playing every week. I play a guy who's when he was in college, he was first team All-American, right? Like he was the best kid in his draft class. Competition wise, like that's probably the biggest thing is like everyone overused it, but it's like Michael Jordan's like, I don't have a gambling issue, I have a competition issue. It's like I legit have a competition issue. Like I think my whole family does.
Feel that.
It's like anything is like a competition. Like you go out and like you'll see your friends and like you'll play darts and like all of a sudden darts get so intense because you're like, I don't want to lose in darts. Like it's like anything, but obviously you're gonna commit X amount of hours to it a week, no matter how much you're getting paid. It's like you want to be the best at it.
How's your spike ball game?
Is
it good? Huh?
It's pretty good. It's good.
We might have to set up a match.
He's a humble guy. I don't know.
When I was at next level, they posted a video of me, and I was like, "This is my best sport." It was like me and like David Ferentz or someone just beating up on like 10-year-olds. But I love spike ball.
Oh, Davey stinks.
Oh man, and congrats as well on signing with Toronto, correct? In the MLL, you'll be playing box this winter, is that correct?
Yeah, playing box will be cool. Always hated the Rock growing up because they're like the big rivals for the Nighthawks, but now I guess behind enemy lines now.
Dude, those games are fun, man.
Yeah,
that's what everyone says. Like they love the indoor games. Like all the guys that play outdoor and indoor, they say indoor is so much fun.
Is there a different dynamic to face-offs in indoor and outdoor lacrosse? Does it change a bit?
Yeah, it's definitely different. So I'll play like in indoor, I'll play defense as well, and the wings are way closer to you, so you kind of got to throw it to space, and then your wings go get it. So you kind of got to communicate, and it's almost like it's honestly like if you have a quarterback and you're throwing to space, and your receivers got to go get it. That's kind of like what it's like. So It's definitely different, but I'm excited for it. The clamp aspect, though, and like what I'm doing is the same, just the exits are a little different.
Right.
So have you not played it before?
I played like very sparingly, but like Canadians take it very seriously, and like to them, lacrosse is just box lacrosse, right? So they call what we call lacrosse, they call field lacrosse. So if I was talking to them, it's like, no, I haven't played lacrosse because they do not disregard anything unless you've played like real box lacrosse. So.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of Canadian hockey players play box.
Yeah.
And another thing, too, is like you having to practice so hard to get used to all these new situations. And you'll have to do that again to be successful in box lacrosse. And we know you will. Like, didn't they change the rule of the field lacrosse draw like a couple of years into your college career, and you just dominated that as well?
Yeah, they changed it like this past year going into it, and I still did well. Yeah, I mean, it didn't really change much. They just so basically they took I'm trying to find something to compare it to, but it's like they basically took exactly what I did and they said you can't do that anymore.
Was it because you're just dummying guys or what?
I don't know. I got some.
So yeah.
So they
like,
changed a rule because of how good you are.
And I don't know. There's a bunch of good guys, but there's like parents DMing me on Instagram like, I've spent so much money on like lesson stuff for my 10-year-old kid, and they changed the rules and stuff. Like, look what you did. I was like, I'm sorry. Like,
that's insane, man.
Yeah, people were losing their minds, but it was.
Can I ask what the change was? Like, what did they do? What was the old rule compared to the new rule?
Yeah, so you used to be able to go down on your knee and you'd face off motorcycle grip. So basically it was like you could punch over the ball a little bit easier. And then now they make you stand up and you have to have your right wrist that punches in the ball instead of being like this. It has to be like inverted. So it's basically like punching someone. If you're going to punch someone, you're going to do it like this, right? So now they try to make it harder for people to punch the ball. It's like, because you're not going to Spider-Man punch anyone, like. So that's basically what they tried to do, but didn't really change that much, honestly. Like, guys were still good with these rules.
Do the rest of the guys in the league like that, or is everyone kind of not on board?
Most of the guys were pretty anti the rule change just because they're like, it was only in college too. So all the pro guys were like, why are you guys changing this rule? Like in the pro game, the pro guys are like, we're not going to change like the rules. It's good how it is. So now like the college rules and pro rules are like very different, which I guess that's kind of the case in certain aspects of like a lot of sports. So it's
but I hate that.
But I also hate it too. It's just why they changed it was what pissed me off. Is like a couple guys were pretty good, and then the board of who makes rules was composed of a couple guys who didn't have good face-off guys. So they decided they'd change the rules. So.
Yeah, I hate that too. It's like the college baseball and MLB. It's like using the wood bat or using the whatever they are, titanium, aluminum, whatever kind of metal they are, and then go to wood. Like I just don't get the point of it.
Yeah, it just didn't make much sense to me. And the thing is, like, guys still do the same thing they used to. They just do it in a different way now, So it's like they didn't really change anything. So
awesome, TD, you're the man, dude. And I think what a good example of how competitive nature meets the desire to be the very best you can and putting in the reps, not just hoping you get better, and humility all in one guy, and you earn every ounce of success you get. And we look forward to seeing you crush it moving forward, man, and could not be more grateful for you being here.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, TD. And to everybody that took the time to listen to episode 4, we want to thank you guys again for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another edition of Chasing Edges. On behalf of Cole and Nate, I'm Dirty Mike. Thanks again, guys.